who's actually Canadian, and he started his life in building and natural building materials, and then actually went back to university and did his PhD on embodied energy and embodied carbon. So some fantastic research that's come out of that. But what he's looking at is saying, look, in terms of just a standard building with natural gas heating, so yes, quite a lot in the materials, even a lot more in operational. This is one that we changed from using gas to using an air source heat pump, so our operational energy becomes a lot less. However, once we start looking at high performance buildings, we're actually putting more materials into our building fabric. And that's great because it means that we actually have better performing buildings, but it also means that our embodied carbon becomes a lot higher. But if we start looking at having high performance buildings using natural building materials, then we're getting the best of both worlds. Low energy use in use and low embodied carbon. So, and I just included this lovely one because the three little pigs. Brick. So embodied carbon, we've got 40 kilograms of CO2 per kilo. Wood, -1, straw, -42. So thank you very much to Chris Magwood for those details. As I said, why I'm going to focus on some of the particular building materials that use fibre, and that's because they can provide really good insulation, okay? Other natural building materials, including mud brick, rammed earth, earth bag, cob, they're great. However, they largely rely on what we call thermal mass. That means their ability to absorb energy slowly and then re-release that, but they don't generally provide good insulation. So I'm just going to put them to side for one day, and we don't have a lot of time. So hempcrete. So this is my block of hempcrete here. Basically, it is a mix of the internal fibre from the hemp plant. Sorry, I thought I brought some along. Just give me 2 seconds. No, my hemp. Of course I brought a bag of hemp along. Who comes to a presentation without a bag of hemp? So you can have a look at this. This is the actual hemp fibre, okay? This is grown in Australia. But you can actually see that the fibres are quite hollow and they hold a lot of sort of air. Pass around some hemp. You can open it up if you really want to. It is the stalk. Don't get excited, anyone, okay? Don't think you can take it home and have some fun. But basically it is mixed together with a lime-based binder, okay? And why would we want to do that? So some of the benefits of building with hempcrete is, yes, good insulation, okay? The walls are what we call vapour permeable. And this builds on some of the stuff that Karina was saying, is that generally inside buildings, from just cooking, breathing, we generally produce greater moisture, okay? And the moisture drive usually is from the inside of the building to the outside. If we have something in our wall that stops that, we get what Karina was showing you, interstitial condensation. That's the black and grey stuff growing in your wall. So if you have a vapour permeable building material, okay, you do not get that because it allows that moisture to escape through the walls. Vapour permeable does not mean that air is getting through, okay? So we've actually done a hempcrete passive house in northern Sydney and we were able to get that airtight. So a couple of other great things. So termite and pest resistant. If anyone came to my talk last year on hempcrete, I was talking all about its fire resistance. And you know, on the internet there were a lot of clips and things of people sort of burning hempcrete blocks. So I got a blowtorch in my backyard, as you do, and sat there for half an hour. And the block was only 100 mil thick. And after having a blowtorch directly on it for half an hour, it was kind of a little bit warm at the back, but not at all hot. You could actually put your hand there while the blowtorch was on that. And that's really, really important because not only are we having non-combustibility, but that ability to resist heat transfer, really important in terms of a bushfire because it's not just not burning down, but it's actually heat transfer can ignite things inside your house. So some great things to be building with hempcrete, fast-growing crop, and to be honest with you, it's actually easy to build with. I got into building with hempcrete by building my own place. I didn't have a great deal of skills at the beginning. I learnt along the way, but it was actually doable, by me. But yeah, the fact that also it relies on a standard timber frame, so that's really helpful because it means that all your services can be run in first, and it's something that a lot of builders can understand, and it translates to a lot more common building practices. Can I say though, there are some downsides. So with most building materials, not everything is sort of perfect. There's no sort of one solution fits all. It's generally weighing up the costs. There are benefits and there are sort of cons, and you've got to sort of look at, what your circumstances are. So one of the cons about the hempcrete is, yes, it does use lime, and lime does have a higher carbon footprint than, say, clay, which is used in the next two building materials. The other thing is that because you're using lime, generally the cost is a bit more expensive than, say, straw bale or light earth, which I'll talk about. But that can sometimes be weighed up against the fact that it's a lot easier for builders to use this. So next one I'm going to talk about is straw bale, and this is actually a beautiful straw bale house done by Viva Homes. It's up on the Darling Causeway. You can't see it, but there we go. And that's actually that house being built, and this is a friend's house out at Mudgee. So generally with straw bale, you get really good insulation. Straw bale, interestingly, doesn't burn. Okay, loose straw, incredibly fire prone. So if you've got loose straw around, it'll burn. Okay, very, very easily. Why straw bale does not burn? It's because all of the air has been pushed out of it. So there's no air, and there's no air for that to burn. And also, straw bale is finished generally with 3 coats of render. So Viva Homes do some prefabricated straw bale panels, and they've actually had it tested and rated to BAL FZ. So hempcrete also been BAL FZ rated as well. So we've had houses in the Blue Mountains, BAL FZ rated, built with hempcrete and straw bale panels. So I think we're running out of time. But again, so high insulation, low embodied energy, great, good fire resistance, great soundproofing. The downsides of straw bale are generally the walls are a bit thicker. Interestingly, so straw bales are generally about 450 millimetres in one direction and 350 in the other direction. Quick question. So which direction do they give you better insulation? Oh, come on, it's a trick question. You know it's got to be 350. Okay, so why do they give you better insulation at 350 millimetres than 450? It's the direction of the straw. So at 450, the individual pieces of straw are going along, and so it's actually easier for the heat to transfer along it. At 350, they're going perpendicular, and so that actually blocks the heat better. So that's just an interesting sort of trivia for straw bale enthusiasts. So with straw bale, really good. However, the downsides is that less builders are familiar with it. There are certainly straw bale builders out there. It's slightly trickier to put your services through because you generally have like a frame that's much further apart, and yes, you're filling it in with the straw bales. So it certainly is a bit trickier in that respect. And you need 3 coats of render. So you need to be love rendering to do your straw bale. And as I was saying before, with thicker walls, it tends to work better with houses where you've got larger properties. Light straw clay. Now, interestingly, this is a methodology that probably is not as widespread as it should be. And it's a little bit like I'd describe it as a cross between the hempcrete and the straw bale, in the sense that a bit like the hempcrete, there is a standard timber frame in the middle of the wall, okay? A formwork is placed around that, and it's filled with a mix of straw and a clay slip. So it's not like cob, which is like really dense clay, okay? It's very light. All that clay is doing is providing glue to sort of stiffen that straw and make it sort of into a solid block. So this is actually a lady in Katoomba's house. So that was made from light straw clay. Very low embodied carbon in that because the walls, they have a timber frame, but they're also made from straw and clay. Benefits over straw bale would be those walls are 250 millimetres thick. You could have like 300, but they're not as big as, say, your straw bale walls. The other thing is, because they're done in a formwork, the walls are then flat, so you only need 2 coats of render and thinner render, so a lot easier in terms of your rendering. And oh look, it's really fun. So that's me after doing some light straw. Because unlike with hempcrete, because you're dealing with lime, you need to have protective equipment, gloves, generally long sleeve shirts, those sorts of things. But clay, you can just get muddy and wash off at the end of the day. So clay is a really lovely substance to work with. And in fact, for that house at Katoomba, they actually dug the clay from the site and sort of soaked it. So you know, if you have appropriate clay subsoil on your site, you can actually use material from your site. So having spruiked the wonders of light straw clay, the downside is because you've got the long fibres, it's a little bit difficult to mix. Various people in Australia have actually developed a thing called a straw cannon, which is kind of like a big pipe with sort of spikes in it, and it's on an angle. It just sort of turns slowly, and you just shovel in straw and clay at one end, and it just sort of flops it around, and it comes out at the other end. But it's not as easy to mix as, say, the hempcrete. You put it in a large pan mixer, you press the button, it mechanically mixes. It's sort of a little bit easier to mechanise that process. So just quickly whip through all of this so we leave some time for questions. Why would I want to use natural building materials for my high performance building? Karina did an awesome job explaining sort of the passive house principles, but what will happen is that you can see here we've got this building and we've got wraps and we've got insulation, we've got frames. This is my hempcrete wall, and we've got a frame and we have our hempcrete, and then we render it. So much simpler. That internal render layer is acting as our air tightness, the render on the outside as our weatherproofing. So it's a really, really, I would say, simple, much more low carbon. Karina also talked about air tightness and wind tightness. Now, this is really super interesting for the nerdy building science people out there, but quite often people will put insulation in their house and they think it's working because their house was uninsulated before, but it's not working as well as it should. Because if you have gaps around the edge of your insulation, if you have air moving through your insulation, it is not performing as well as it should. But if we have materials like the hempcrete, straw bale, light earth, just by the nature of those materials, they do not allow the air to circulate within or between in gaps, and so you automatically get better performance. They're all vapour permeable, so we have great indoor air. For nerdy people, I have some references on hempcrete, and for other nerdy people, I have on straw bale, light earth and natural plasters. Sorry, we're whipping through all of this. Can I also do a quick plug for the Hemp Building Directory? Because hemp building is relatively new in Australia, we sort of linking up builders and suppliers and designers was a little bit difficult. And so myself and Jeremy, who's in the audience, hi Jeremy, actually created what's called the Hemp Building Directory. And basically we're trying to list all of the suppliers, builders, designers, engineers in Australia on our directory, so you can find that. If you'd like to sign up to our Hemp Building Directory newsletter, we send out a monthly newsletter, no more frequent than that. Please feel free. Probably can ignore the Hemp Business one, unless you are a Hemp Business, then come and talk to me. Very, very quickly then, we got questions. Can I open up for questions? Yes. Karina, tell me.
Where our house is, it's ballot 40.
Yes.
And so is the hempcrete with the render ballot 40?
It means ballot Z. So ballot Z is higher than ballot 40.
Yes.
Yeah, so absolutely. Ballot 40, no problems.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yes.
I've got questions about the hempcrete houses. It's airtight, so that's when we look at the walls. So how do you ensure the airtightness through the roof, for example, or the junctions where you don't have the hempcrete?
So a couple of things. You can actually use a lighter version of hempcrete in the roof and the floor. But otherwise, if we were just doing the walls and doing more conventional building, there's a tape called Contiga, done by ProClimate, and it's a mesh tape that you put in the top of your render, and then that tapes to whatever you have as your airtight layer in the roof. So when we did the airtightness testing for the passive house in northern Sydney, we achieved that really well, so I was very happy about that. Yes?
In terms of internal decoration,
Yes.
art render and stuff like that with a hemp product,
Mm.
can you like wallpaper, or what are your options internally for decoration?
In terms of that, you wouldn't want a wallpaper, because wallpaper would tend to be impermeable, most of them, and so that whole idea about vapour permeability is you want to make sure that whatever you finish it with is also going to be vapour permeable. So internally, with all of these, we generally use either a lime render or a clay render. So you can actually use a clay render on the inside, and then if you can either put an oxide in the render for whatever colour you like, or you can have vapour permeable lime-based paints. So one question at the back.
Sorry, the little blocks, practice out that you use on the outline.
No. Okay, there are a number of hempcrete block products which are available in Australia. There's one company manufacturing them locally and about 3 companies who are importing them from overseas. I understand that the Murray Hemp Growing Cooperative are also looking at producing their own blocks, so some exciting things happening in the future. But the issue is, because the hemp is quite lightweight, which is what gives it its insulation, okay, that's what makes it non-load bearing. So generally there's a timber frame. So the hemp block manufacturers will either have a timber frame with hemp blocks on one side or both sides, or they'll actually have to cut it around the frame. There's one company in Queensland who actually do like a steel frame with blocks which have hollows through them for it, but it is not load bearing is the answer. Okay, yes?
The hemp block is not so flammable, but a wooden frame introduces the flammability.
Okay, we go back to my, so this is my hempcrete wall, okay? What I have is my timber frame is in the middle, okay? But there is a layer of hempcrete thicker than what I did my fire test on either side of that timber frame. So that's actually protecting my timber frame from both fire and pests and all sorts of things. Yes?
What about the roof framing? How does it contour to it? What do you use for roof?
You can use whatever, I mean, like you can use conventional roof framing. I mean,
it's normal.
it,
Will be normal.
yeah, I mean, you can use whatever you like. I mean, sorry, yes?
I, maybe not the only one, own a terrible house. It's awful. It's like literally the toilet paper blows in the wind on the wall. When do you know if you want to meet like passive house standards or have a decent house? When are you just leaving it up and knocking it down versus trying to retrofit?
That's a very good question. I think that there is a basic assessment you will have to do to see how well the structure is made of the house and if that can be reused or not.
You've seen my house.
So in your case, it's more like a knockdown rebuild. Sorry, but there are really good quality timber houses out there with timber structure, and I think there is a very good thing of doing retrofit instead of building new houses. So in a retrofit, you can actually have a slower process and do each thing at each time. There are a couple of things that need to go together because it's a holistic way of looking at the building. But it's important to analyze the building quality.
So you could add materials.
So in fact, we actually have done a few projects where we, particularly with fibro houses, where people want to get rid of their asbestos fibro, and so but underneath they're often just hardwood frames. And so you've already got all your power and electrics and everything's all there. So stripping off the fibro and basically replacing it with hempcrete, you can do that. Tricky things are the hempcrete is generally a little bit thicker than the wall, and you've got to think about how you do around your windows. So yes, it can be done, just needs a little bit of planning and brain power. I think we've probably got 1 minute left. So yes, last question.
Is there a difference in external maintenance for 3 different building materials?
They all basically have a render finish, so not really. With all the natural building materials, and quite frankly, I would say any building material, have eaves on your house, okay? Eaves are fantastic. Houses you see without eaves, just forget it. It's like they protect your house. They protect your house from rain. They protect your, so the best thing you can do is actually have some good eaves. Protects your windows, your wall materials. But yeah, generally they have a render finish on the outside. So, last question.
Look, I think a lot of us hemp aficionados love the look of the hemp, but what about if you want it to look like a normal house? Can you have like the render on the outside looking quite white or whatever colour you want it, charcoal, and can you have the render on the inside like white walls with paintings hang up?
Absolutely. So in terms of that, there's a great deal of sort of building flexibility in that you can even clad the outside. I have a project in Kangaroo Valley where the client wanted to live in a barn. And it does look like a barn, and we clad it in WeatherTex, but it's hempcrete on the inside. In fact, I have a feeling that one of the projects was... Oh, sorry, it's this one. It's actually this one here. You can't tell from what it looks like on the outside. But yes, you can. And the other thing is the render can either be soft and curvy and lovely and natural, or you can have just like a really flat render that can look crisp and very sort of modern. So great deal of flexibility. But my takeaway for everyone would be, think. So if, when you're looking at your houses, even if you're doing minor renovations, thinking about how can I make this better? And if I am making it better, how can I think about making it better, healthier for me internally, but also healthier for the planet? Is that sort of